Patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv. Out! For those fireballs, Heartbeat City is taking your call, suffering. DuckFeed.tv. And now, from WDFD The Duck, it's Heartbeat City with Cozy Snugglefield. 'Cause somebody out there feels lonely, and we're here to help. Hello, listeners. This is Cozy Snugglefield with you again for another episode of Heartbeat City. We're taking your calls. We're healing your hearts. And this week, I am joined by my co-host, Kole Ross. Cole, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. It's a nice, bright, sunny summer day, and just kind of trying to enjoy the warm weather as a not warm weather person.
Yeah, that can be tricky.
Yeah,
keeping it indoors.
Yeah. Trying to recapture some of that, what it felt like to, go through summer as a kid. That's a real special time of year, but only in memory.
Yes. Luckily it is nice and AC here in the studio.
Of course.
Yeah. So we have your calls. People are calling in with their heartbreak and their troubles, and we're here to help. And I'm going to go ahead and put that on now.
Hello there, Heartbeat City. This is Lion Yeti. I have a relationship with a girl who's amazing, like smart, funny, beautiful, into most of the same stuff I am. Only problem is she lives about 90 minutes away. How can I keep that flame going when we can see each other maybe once a weekend? Thanks, guys. Bye.
So long distance relationship question here from, I believe, Lanye. The connection's not great,
right?
But I apologize if we have your name incorrect.
Yeah.
Long distance.
There might be some consolation, and I don't know if this is insensitive to say, that 90 minutes isn't the longest possible distance for a relationship, That was the first thing I thought of as well. It makes me wonder where Lanye lives. Mm-hmm. Because there's a strange thing that can kind of happen I feel like when you live in a rural area, something like 90 minutes of travel time seems like the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And then in a more urban area where it could be 45 minutes to get to this store or a concert or what have you. Yeah,
90 minutes kind of seems a little bit less less insurmountable.
But yeah, I mean, like regardless, 90 minutes is a long time to fit into like a particular day.
Yes.
Like there is a convenience of like, I just have to drive like maybe 30 minutes across town to see that. Like the geometry of like fitting this in like a Tetris block into a week can be tough, and it can introduce like friction, right?
Right. Well, and there's also undoubtedly other factors here. So I presumably there are work days, and kind of 9 to 5 work days that this impacts, because that's not the kind of thing you want to do at the end of a work day.
Right.
So it sounds like it is it's worth holding on to me. This is not, I would not say this is a deal breaker.
No.
I think that can, it can be if it is a long enough relationship. One of my favorite expressions of this, and it's a pop culture thing, but I love the episode of The Office where Michael drives Holly to Nashua.
Oh, that's so just gutting. Just when she starts crying as she realizes like even how far the halfway point is.
Yeah, as Life is a Highway comes on, for the third time on the radio,
right,
during this drive, it could be like that. So I'm not trying to say, could be worse, which is not good advice, right?
Right. It's very bad advice. And like another thing that might be interesting to know is like, is this how the relationship started? Because like I have been in relationships where the move was, not dissimilar to this, but because we were so accustomed to the proximity, right, and the convenience that it has, like that can be a test. That can be a test for a relationship that came up under easier circumstances.
Yeah. Can you speak to a little bit of your experience with this this kind of long distance thing? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, this happened here recently. And by recently, I mean like 3 years. I'm kind of a non-combatant when it comes to relations and stuff. So I'm a great guest to have on for this. No, but like here recently, dated and saw a girl who, ended up having to move away. I live in Ohio. I ended up moving to Michigan. And that's probably like a 4 or 5 hour drive, and it'd be a very similar circumstance to this. And I don't, because of the way I work, I don't really have weekends where this can happen or where we could fall into a rhythm. And it was like, we just kind of made a decision looking at it, that like, no, it's not, it'd be better to cut this off as opposed to, let it die slow later on.
Get invested and then have it be a kind of a misery grenade you're throwing into the future.
Right. I just, I even in the past, like, understanding like what it was like to try and carry a high school relationship into college days and things like that. Like, just, this is a lesson that you learn, pretty early on. But still, it happens, especially, with how easy it is to be like time shifted and geography shifted. You can feel like you are in this intimate kind of, connection, conversation, when in reality, like physical distance does factor in. I realize I'm sounding very grim about the possibility of this. All of that is to say that like, if this is how the relationship popped up, you're training in double gravity here.
Yeah. Eventually, if you do live together circumstantially, that will be much better. It's also something, it can be grim, but it also depends on your individual needs for contact. Mm-hmm. Some people, so when I am in a relationship, like I want to hang out about twice a week. Mm-hmm. That's what I have time for between the rest of my life and work, and that is a fulfilling and solid amount of romantic contact. That can vary though. Mm-hmm. So to you or to your lady, you might need more frequent contact. And it's up to you to see if you can find kind of a simulacrum of that. Yeah. You ask, how do you keep the kind of the flames on? Do you communicate well over the phone? Yeah. Or over text? Do you appreciate that? Does that feel like a meaningful substitute to you? Yeah. If the phone doesn't, what about FaceTime? What about something with like that video component? Mm-hmm. Find some time to Skype. It's going to be work. Yeah. You're going to have to, it's going to be a little extra effort, and it's not, those times during the week can, depending on yourself, could end up feeling like consolation prizes. Yes. Like kind of methadone to get you to the weekend. And if that's the case, you just kind of have to examine how you're feeling after doing everything you can do. Yeah. So not to just totally throw this back in your court, but like you have to see how much the flames are dying with the amount that you can kind of stoke them from a distance. Right. Here's something to try. I'm making a lot of assumptions. I'm assuming that you're similar to me, but like a huge part of keeping this up when I've tried it in the past was to set up like a regular kind of thing. It sounds like you are earmarking weekends and trying to figure out how to split time. In that way. That routine I think is going to be super important, but equally important would probably be surprise visit. Like, oh yeah, you talk with her. Like you have the routine, and that is there as kind of the structure. That can easily wither as it goes. Like, don't just like show up when she's, like, oh, I'm making dinner for my boss. It's like a sitcom kind of thing where you're imposing, sure. But just like, unannounced, go and show up, like introduce some spontaneity to that. Or even if not unannounced, just like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And it not being an ordinary night, depending on where you're at in your life, like a literal unannounced visit can be more of a burden, but just kind of on a non-regular night. Mm-hmm. And that regularity is really important. I think that's that's always been a theme of the show, and we brought it up a bunch, is the idea that it is work, mm-hmm. and you have to finding a time, kind of setting aside a time, doesn't mean that you're failing mm-hmm. at a relationship. Like being intentional about it and putting in the work is not a failure. Yeah. It is only an effortless, swish on TV Right, or incredibly rarely. But most relationships, every relationship I've been in, has been, and as somebody who's been divorced, like, who knows, this is all just advice, from my perspective, but it's done a lot of dating and been a lot of relationships. Yeah. They've all been work of various kinds. And this is kind of your work that you have to do is maintain that contact.
Yeah. It's never, things are only easy when you're young. When you have this enforced proximity because your world is very small. Every other aspect of being a mature adult involves a lot more work, a lot more logistics, a lot more planning. There are people who live these charmed existences where that can fall in, but I hate the term, but adulting, a huge part of that is, working to, make things happen that used to be easy but aren't now.
Yeah. Yeah, and another piece of this is again just looking at how permanent it is. If this person is smart and funny and beautiful and amazing, is this something where down the road that distance will be shortened? Maybe at some point you would want to live in the same town, or kind of put this to a test. And if that's something that's possible in the future, probably not worth throwing away over 90 minutes.
Right.
I know that wasn't your question, but just something to keep in mind. Like, it will get hard from time to time, and it's probably, in my opinion, worth pushing through.
Yeah.
Let's take the next call.
Hey there. My name is Fletcher, and I have a problem in that the past 6 or 7 people I have dated, had a fling with, courted, etc., have all within about somewhere between 2 months to a year of meeting me come out as furries. Everyone. And I'm not a furry, so it's not like, oh, my partner's into this. Is there something about me I should know, or do I need to just, accept the universe telling me this? What do I do with this knowledge and this strange foreign curse? Thank you, and keep up with the work.
Yeah, so this is Fletcher's having an issue that I don't think either of us have had specific experience with.
No. And if I've been in this scenario, it's never come to light.
Mm. Yeah. I've never dated someone who I felt like, or who turned out to be a furry. I have had people turn out to be kind of surprise poly, which is not the exact same axis, but down to the principle though, the reason why I think this question is worth answering is because it also comes down to that it being, it's not about one kind of proclivity being better than the other. It's about how much you match up and how much you're on the same page.
Yeah.
So it is not it is not a bad thing to be a furry. It is not a bad thing to be poly. It can be difficult if one partner is and the other one isn't.
Yeah.
And it sounds like this has not worked out. That's been a deal breaker for Fletcher.
Right. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't come up. It would just be something that's kind of like, well, that's just a fact of this relationship, that it's being framed as like, oh, this keeps happening. Like, oh, why do I keep stubbing my toe? Well, maybe move that end table.
And it's not something that you can do things about. I imagine that with and this is a generality, so I'm not saying this in every case, but I imagine with a certain kind of alternative person, somebody who is, a little bit more alternative in lots of other ways, that kind of extends to being open about things in sex and relationships as well.
Right.
So there probably is a comorbidity with your interest and kind of your persona with this.
Yeah. Comorbidity was actually going to be the word I used for that, because, this might be just more likely to come along with other, kind of more adventurous, fetishistic kind of things, if that is an arena that you're playing in,
Yes. And when I say morbidity, that's kind of a loaded word. I don't mean like literally.
No, or using it strictly in like the medical or psychological sense, which we're not qualified to say, but like it's that same idea that like, oh, if one thing is true, the other thing is more likely to be true.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything to do about it. I think that this is okay. I think this is the same thing that if you found any other if you consider this to be a fundamental incompatibility, I don't think, unless you are doing some kind of dog whistle in your kind of profiling, or, I don't know how you date. I don't know if it is in person or if you're using the internet. Using the internet, it's possible that there is a dog whistle that you have. I've had an experience with not so much a dog whistle, but I left the on a dating profile, left the single, looking for single people or monogamous people blank. So we ended up having a period where a lot of people contacted me. We would talk, sometimes go on a date, and then I would find out that they were part of a like polyamorous triad, which is not something I'm particularly interested in.
Right.
No judgment on that, but it's not something that works for me, I found. And I realized that even though I wasn't dog whistling, that I was kind of leaving it open by omission. And had to kind of shore that up. So I would take a look if you are doing this through a text-based thing, you're doing it through a dating service, what have you. Take a look and make sure you're not doing any kind of signaling.
Yeah.
If you're not doing any signaling, I would consider it a coincidence and something that kind of comes with trucking in an alternative kind of culture, and then just keep trying.
Yeah. I feel singularly unqualified to answer this question, actually.
Yeah. It's a tricky question. I don't have any experiences with furries, and it also turns out to be as far as I know, right? Like it's possible I haven't gotten far enough in a relationship where that has come out.
Yeah, there have been other factors that have gotten in the way. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I also don't know how like my version of this is like, but by selecting for a certain kind of person when I'm looking for a romantic partner, I'm also getting things that are not, like, hey, they happen to be furry, but there are difficulties that come along with just kind of the personality type that I tend to seek out, and that I've been with in the past. Like this is a different flavor, probably, a more pronounced flavor of something that I think is a very common problem, which is wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, and you are going to attract like a similar kind of body. Right. It's the kind of thing that happens whenever I'm surprised. I'm in the same town and I find out that friends of mine have gone on dates with people I've gone on dates with.
Right,
and it's like, well, that's algorithmic dating when you're using the internet.
Right.
If you break anyone down to a collection of likes and dislikes and values, like a lot of times people who are friends will kind of present the same in that context. So there's something probably that the way you're presenting that presents the same as people who are into that, but it's not a problem. It's not, you're never hurt by meeting somebody and finding out that they're not into the same thing that you're into,
I have no idea at what phase that particular truth comes out.
Yes. Even so, if you imagine the most, and when I say worst case scenario, I just mean most awkward case scenario.
Yeah.
Like it comes out literally pulling a costume out. In the bedroom. I'm not saying this for laughs, but just like theoretically, like that's as late as it could come out, in the thing. That's still something that doesn't speak ill of either of you, and you'd have to treat with kind of a light touch. Yeah. Because it comes down to, again, something that comes out in the show a lot is it's just like it is more about incompatibility than it is a value on either person.
Right.
It is just something that you've decided is something that you can't truck with.
Right.
And that's also, the other side of the coin is it's fine. You don't have to feel bad. When you say, is this the universe telling me something? You're not square or bad if you don't want to mess around with that. Like what turns you on.
Right.
That's just the case. And you don't have to, with a couple of exceptions, with obvious like pederasty and the like, you don't have to feel bad about being into a kink or not, and also not being into a kink.
Yeah.
Like if you were just like, hey, I'm going to get together with somebody and I want to have some vanilla sex, like that is fine. There is nothing wrong with that. Let's take our final call for the episode.
Hi, Gary. This is Joost.
And Elizabeth.
So, Gary, Elizabeth and I have been together for about 7.5 years, which has been great for much of it. But we're both under a lot of stress because of work. Do you have any thoughts about how to deal with heavy work stress in a relationship, keep things fun, and somehow deal with that?
All right, Joost, talking about somebody who very long-term relationship, and how do you keep that fresh?
Yes, especially when you're trying to deal with work stress, which affects not just, relationships, but every single aspect of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. You are, one of the things that is true in a relationship is that I think that you need to be able to bring your complete self to it. And that includes kind of the less idealized version of you that we are made by work. Yeah. By doing something that is stressful, even if it's something you like doing, if it is stressful, if it takes up a lot of your time, if it is tiring, it does turn, it doesn't leave you as your best self.
Right.
And part of being in a long-term relationship is understanding that and being okay with it.
Yeah. Especially if you're cohabitating. I mean, this sounds like a long-term relationship. They are living together, and this has probably been, if not an issue in the past, it's been something they've had to adjust to.
Yes. Yeah. So there's kind of two parts of that. Is one, I think, I want to talk a little bit about accepting that or allowing for it. Yeah. Allowing space for it, and then also talk to kind of specific things you can do to kind of keep, relationships kind of fresh. Yeah. So the first one, have you been in a relationship where this has kind of come through? Have you cohabitated?
No, I've never cohabitated. I'm way too much of a loner for that. It is
incredibly hard.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't know that I'm ready for that.
It adds another qualifier to this person that you're in a relationship with, where they not only have to mark anything, you have to have that kind of chemistry and that kind of ineffable love, but you also have to be a good roommate.
Right.
So, are we good roommates? Mm-hmm. That ends up becoming a question that doesn't sound romantic, but ends up actually being incredibly important.
Oh, and they're separate questions entirely.
Yes.
There have been times where I, spent a weekend with somebody and realized oh, this is dire. This is bad. Even just the way that we temporarily share this bathroom.
Traveling together.
And that's like Everybody Loves Raymond sitcom style stuff. But it's very true. It's still, is a big deal. I'm going to assume that if they're long term, they've dealt with that. But I've never done this, so it's hard for me to offer anything meaningful in that regard. You have more experience with this.
Yeah, I've done my share of cohabitation, and the thing that I find that's true, I talk about kind of allowing for that lesser self that you get out there, is just to be on top of it and be honest about it. Yeah. Strive to craft a relationship where you can say something like, hey, I had a really terrible day at work and I need to just go for a walk. This has nothing to do with you. This is not a reflection on us. I need to go spend some time alone.
Yeah.
Or I need, be upfront and open about what you need. Mm-hmm. That's not like a card you play all the time.
No.
Where you constantly because then it becomes indicative of a large issue. Then it becomes can we, do we want the same thing as far as cohabitation? But just being able to say, from time to time, hey, I got to call a mulligan. Mm-hmm. Real life has caught up with me, and I'm not going to be a good partner right now. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean, tossing vases across the room. It means I'm going to go read a book in a cafe and take an hour and be single, more or less. We are not going to be a dyad for a minute while I recharge myself.
Yeah. And being very clear about the difference between a problem that the other person can help with and a problem that you need space to deal with yourself,
Absolutely. Yeah. Because ideally the person would help you. If it is something you need, come home and be like, hey, I had a really rough day. Can I talk to you about it? Mm-hmm. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But not every problem is like that. And that miscommunication, assuming every problem is like that, has come up for me a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And that is a real common, I think, relationship problem. It's a little bit of one of those men are from Mars, women are from Venus type things that is mostly bullshit, but holds at least a little bit of truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's rooted in communication. At the very least, like there is a truth to that. It is how do we actually express and fulfill our needs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. See, there's something, and I think that this is part of the alchemy of whatever makes this long-term cohabitation work, which is it's very easy for this kind of arrangement where like, oh, I'm not going to be great right now, can set up and like, okay, like we just both have to kind of accept that we're going to do this, to each other. Like we're going to have tolerance for each other on this, and and extend that amount of grace. It's difficult, and it has been difficult in the past for me, for that not to turn into scorekeeping.
Yes.
Right. Like, oh, you came home and were a pile in front of in front of Netflix 2 days out of out of more than last week. We've canceled this number of plans. Like if you're not mindful about that, that can actually like set up into scorekeeping and set up into, fighting for territory almost.
Yeah. Yeah. In general, I think, when you catch yourself counting, in a relationship like that, that means there's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
If you know the number of times your partner has done something that bothers you, that speaks to it passing a certain threshold.
Yeah.
Where it becomes kind of ammo. And at that point, it can become, just because you have to have the ability to come home and be a pile in front of Netflix from time to time, doesn't mean you don't also have a responsibility. It is it is a card to be kind of cashed in from time to time.
Yeah.
What from time to time means is going to vary.
Yeah.
From kind of couple to couple and couples needs. And there are probably people for whom none of that is okay. And if that's the case, that's, I say sincerely, like, wish you luck, like finding somebody for whom they don't need that kind of complete personhood.
Right.
Or are able to subsume that healthily. I think that's more difficult. Second part of the question, how to kind of keep things fun when you have that dynamic. Something that I want to share, and it was a tactic I learned from, an ex. So this relationship ultimately didn't work out, but it was one of her all-time greatest ideas. Something that I've referred to before is a surprise date, which is, taking, we used to once a month, we would take turns and one person would take the other person to go do something and they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So, and these were, these tended to be like kind of cheesy activities. That's what worked for me.
Yeah.
Going and like glass blowing and making terrariums and the like, but whatever works for you. Maybe going to a new bar or a new restaurant is exciting, something like that, but keep that element of kind of early date. Like, she's picking me up and I don't know where we're going. That can be really fun and kind of exciting. And, a very, very thoughtful event like that, can be really enriching and make things feel very fresh, because you can say, you know what, that was like very, very fun and very thoughtful. Like I am actively loving. I am actively grateful that this person had the presence of mind to do that and think of me for it.
Yes. That is a really, really great idea, because what that does, it does something that I've really enjoyed doing in the past, like even just in general as a person, which is being a tourist in your own town a little bit. Like, that's an expression of that, but like you hit on something very important there, which is early date kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like, if you want things to not get like run down into this wagon rut, where we are just, butting up against the world, and being trampled down by work, go through and actually force yourself to recapture stuff. There's an element of that can feel like fake it till you make it almost. I would urge you to not think of it that way, because the only way to do is to do. And the only way to not become, younger versions, younger facsimiles of, the bitter old couple that doesn't share a life, they just share a space, is to continue treating, finding these windows of, like just youthful collaboration, and, exchanging kind gestures and things like that, things that can go away as you settle into the routine.
Yeah. Like the phrase, I have the same kind of authenticity bias that makes me squirm at the phrase fake it till you make it. But what that really means is do something that is not effortless.
Right.
Like do the work. When someone says fake it till you make it and they're talking about being a writer, that means write.
Yeah.
It means you are a writer. Like it means you're going to go actually engage in the thing that you want to be, that you want to do.
Yeah.
It's just maybe not doing it at the same effect that you prefer. And that's fine. And this, I think that extends to, not just those kind of like recreating those early date things that can be physical as well. It is kind of a stock standard cosmopolitan advice thing, but something that like when I was married and, the longest relationship I've been in was when I was married. And I was with my ex-wife for 7 years, and sex things got, kind of boring, and setting aside time for it, not expecting it just to be a spontaneous feeling that happened to sweep over both of us at the same time. Was actually awesome. Like being like, hey, you know what? Friday, like we're setting aside time for this and it's going to be awesome.
Right.
So you can kind of take those things that you felt early on in the relationship that were very, very fresh and fun and make time for them. Do that, treat them as, put them on the calendar. That is not a betrayal of the spontaneity of love or affection. That is maintenance for that spontaneity. And not to be frowned upon.
The entire thing isn't artificial at that point. All you are doing is making it as easy as possible to have the kind of relationship and the kind of shared life that you want, by actually doing it, by actually committing to it, and setting that aside, And I think that there's also an element of this, if you're afraid of putting work into this, I think a lot of people, and this is true not just of romantic relationships, but also I think it comes down to like professional considerations. Anytime you're looking to other people and seeing that it's easy, there's a common trap that people fall into, which is confusing somebody else's front stage for their backstage.
Yes.
And if you're thinking, why is this not easy? Why am I not getting the end result? It seems easy for everybody else, be that, the boogeyman of social media or just your other friends and things like that. You never see the work that somebody puts into it. And, if you are putting this in without being conscious of that and being aware of it, because you'd be conscious that you know that this is work, this is hard. But if you start resenting the fact that you have to put into it, there is a disconnect there where, there is a fundamental kind of element of confusion that is present.
Yes. Something we say on the show all the time is nobody from outside a dyad can see the inside of it.
Right.
Every relationship between two people is a secret thing. And it is folly to pretend that it's not.
Yeah.
And there are things, that can also be, that doesn't just have to be framed in terms of comparing yourself to others. Like that is a strength too.
Yeah.
Like take some heart in the fact that you have this, even when you were working at it, you have a unique thing that nobody else has. It is all unique. Thank you very much. That is all the time we have for tonight on Heartbeat City. If you have a question for Cozy Snugglefield and his guest, hit us up at 502-69-HBEAT. That is 502-69-HBEAT. Leave a message, and we will do everything we can. Kole Ross, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Kole Ross. That is KoleRoss.
Absolutely a recommended follow. You can find me, Cozy Snugglefield, at Garybuh, GaryBuh, as always. And until next time, keep on feeling. Heartbeat City is brought to you by the patrons at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and is produced by Bryce Salad and Boxer Kwan. Heartbeat City is intended for advice only and is not responsible for the consequences of following that advice. If you have a question for Heartbeat City, please call in and leave a message at 502-69-HBEAT, that's 502-69-HBEAT, or write in at gary@duckfeed.tv with your letter. Thank you.